right, so one of the things that's been on my list for a long time is to organize my chipboard pieces. That's these guys right here. Chipboard is one of my favorite things to add onto my projects. It's an easy embellishment add-on, oftentimes has some sort of words on it that support my story. Those are the kind of products that I like to make and the products that I like to use. So today I want to show you how I am organizing those chipboard pieces. Edwards and welcome back to Craft This Story. In this week's episode, we are going to talk about chipboard, and we're going to focus on two different aspects related to chipboard. Number one is chipboard organization. I'm going to take you along with me while I go through the process of organizing some of my own chipboard pieces here. And then number two, I am going to build a layout that uses some of the chipboard pieces that I have organized. Let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, so organizing my chipboard is something that I've been thinking about doing for a long time, and you may have seen in some of my videos, either here or in some of my classroom videos, where I will literally take this box of extra chipboard and I just dump it out, right? I dump it out and then I pick through it and I see which ones maybe I want to use to support whatever it is, whatever the story is that I'm telling. So this is not the ideal situation, right, for me in terms of organization and be able to find stuff. The way that I'm going to organize it right now, it also might not be the ideal situation, but I want to try it. I want to see, how does this work for me? Does it work if I organize these by shape? Because shape is something that I like to use a lot, and I like to repeat the same shapes over and over again. So that can relate to my photos, that can relate to stories, story cards, or the way that I put my journaling together, and it can also relate to chipboard. So one of the products that we often include in our kits and our project kits is chipboard, because chipboard is one of my most favorite things. I just really like it. I like adding it onto my projects. It can give it a little something without being a lot of something. What I have done here already is these are all a bunch of chipboard pieces that have been punched out of their backing. So let me show you an example of a chipboard sheet. Here's a chipboard sheet that still has the backing on it, right? So when we manufacture these, this is what uses this uses what is called a die. Okay, so a die is essentially a pattern. So when I sit down to design a kit, I have a template that I am working from. So this is one example. Here's another example. And the more products that you purchase from us or you subscribe to our kits, you will see different dies popping up again and again, right? So you'll see this one with the hearts for different kinds of projects. You'll see this one for different kinds of projects as well. The end result of that is that when I have a stash of lots of chipboard pieces, many of the shapes are the same because we have used the same dies over time. So what I started doing, this is a probably an embroidery floss box, and this idea kind of bloomed for me in December of last year when I saw Crystal, one of our creative team members, talking about organizing, using these for organization. And so I actually am using these. I have my December daily stuff, my products that I use specifically for that. That's organized in a different place, and I did use one of these for that. It's sitting away right now because it's February, and I'll pull that back out again in December. But honestly, what I want to do today and what I'm going to do in this video is you're going to just join me in the process of organizing these, and then we'll go ahead and make a page with them at the end. So using our stash to tell a specific story. I have no idea what that story is going to be yet, but we'll come to that point at the end. But the first step for me is simply just grouping like things together. Now you can do this lots of different ways. Like you could decide, okay, so half circles is a shape that comes up pretty regularly, and we have a couple different sizes of half circle shapes. Do I want to put the same sizes in there together just because they're half circles, maybe. Or maybe I want to have the other half circle, the smaller half circles in a different one. So I'm kind of thinking that what I might do first is just do a kind of general organization here on my table of these different shapes. Some of them I know for sure, like these larger tag shapes here, I'm just gonna put those all together. I also, over here in my drawer where you saw where I started from today, I do have a circle, a box that has a bunch of circles in it, so I'm trying to decide if I'm gonna put these in there or am I just gonna put them in here. I think I'm just probably gonna just put them inside of here. So like I said, I'm gonna start off just by kind of quickly going through here and organizing some of these into piles. Okay, so here's a look at my finished thing, right? My finished organization, at least for the chipboard pieces that I had in my drawer over here. And now that'll free up this box to hold something else that I will need it to hold. I feel like I could probably do this sort of thing for other things that I have here in my drawer, like here's my little box of hearts. But for right now, this is working just fine. The chipboard was the main thing that I really have wanted to tackle and get organized. So I'm feeling super good about this. I will store these underneath my in my table here. I have some shelves that are down below, and I'm just going to stack these down there, so when it comes time to put a page together where I know I want to add some chipboard, I'll be able to look in here and be like, oh, okay, let's see, today I want to use, add a bunch of hearts on there. Today I want to use tags as my jumping off point, or I'm going to use ovals. Again, going shape based, having that be the focus. Now, one of the other things I'm looking, so one of the things that I might also do, more chipboard. So for many of you that have subscribed or been around for a while, it's totally possible that you have a bunch of chipboard. All right, so I found chipboard. Just, this is a stash. This is going to be even older, going back to some of the beginning of the story kits. And then I also have some of the early Stories by the Month kits have chipboard pieces that I've just kind of kept by the month. But I think this is probably a good time for me to go through, take out the chipboard pieces from these, break them up, and then I can still use this organization for the individual months, just keeping the cards in there, whatever, or some of the newer Stories by the Months kits that we have. So I think that's what I'm going to do next, is go through my past chipboard things that I have right here, at least. So these are going to be shop chipboard pieces and things, and there might be some of them that I decide not to break apart, which is totally fine. But I think I'm going to break most of them up for now and see how that goes in terms of working as an organizational setup for myself. When you are embarking on some organization like this, obviously this takes time, and so you always have this trade-off between spending time organizing and spending time actually storytelling. And I think my personal goal is to spend way more time telling stories versus dealing with the product. But the product exists here to support my stories. So I'm trying to get it set up in a way where it can work for me rather than just being stored, right? I want to use it. I want it to be a part of how my stories come together, but I don't want it to detract from that. So as you are going through this process, if you choose to do something like this, there might be some times where you come across things where you're like, yeah, I'm probably not going to use that anymore. Like, that's probably not a sentiment I will use. That's probably not a phrase I will use, or that's not a shape I would use. And if that's the case, I totally encourage you to put it to the side and keep a stash or a box or a basket or whatever. Keep a place where you are putting things that you know you're not going to use, and you can share those with your friends, with a local school, a women's shelter that might take scrapbooking supplies, that kind of thing. Like, don't keep the stuff that you're not going to use. If you really aren't going to use it, like if it's not a color that appeals to you, it's not a sentiment that appeals to you, don't keep it in your stuff. And so I'm kind of thinking about that while I go through this process. Part of what happens there is that you need to be able to get in touch with the kinds of stories that you want to tell, right? Or the kinds of sentiments that you like to use. And the more you scrapbook, the more you will understand what those sorts of things are. Like, I can pretty much go through these products and be like, I will use this, I will use this, I will use this, I won't use that, I won't use that, and I won't use that. But I'm not going to show you that, because the things that I don't use or won't use or don't have an interest in using maybe totally be something that you love and might be your favorite piece of the kit or the product offering or whatever, or the chipboard sheet. So just a couple things to keep in mind as you go about this process. One thing that you'll see too when I'm punching these out, I'm pushing them out so that the back stays on them, and most of the time that's able to happen. That's how I'm able to store all of these chipboard pieces together, is simply because I'm keeping the back on them. Now, another thing, one of the things that I hear, or I talk about a lot, and that you'll hear me say in many of the projects and the products that we offer, is that I want these to be, I want the products that we make to support your storytelling, and to support your storytelling, but also to be jumping off points as prompts or ways to get your stories told, right? Like, here's a perfect example. Here is a half circle chipboard piece that just says you and me. This could absolutely 100% be the jumping off point for a story about you and someone else that you care about. So the sentiments and the thoughts that I put onto these chipboard pieces are designed to either spark a story inside you or to support a story that you might already know you want to tell. Okay, so now you have seen my organization process. I've got two boxes here. Here's what they look like just from a different angle now that I have my face forward camera on. These guys are probably, let's see, I don't have let's get my ruler here. These boxes are just about probably 2 1/4 deep. And I ordered a couple of them on Amazon, and we'll link them for you guys below. I think that these are the same ones that Crystal was using. But now what I want to do in this segment of the video this week is put together a layout using some of these chipboard pieces. And one of the reasons why I did my organization in this way, where I kept like shapes together, is because I do like to include repeated shapes as a design element in many of my projects. So I have a photo here that was from this past week, and I shared it on Instagram and talked a little bit about what books I'm reading and those sorts of things. Reading books is one of my favorite things to do. And I'm thinking about making a two-page spread with this. This is the size of the outside of the page protectors in a 6x8 album. So that's kind of what I'm starting with. If you're doing this kind of thing, you can do whatever size you want. The idea of using the shapes of chipboard together can be used on any size. So let's just take a look at what I have on here right now. I've already started playing around a little bit with what chipboard pieces do I actually want to use. But the first thing I want to do is just lay some out so you can see what does this actually look like when you bring a bunch of the same chipboard pieces together. But before we do that, first I want to show you an example of a page that I did. I think this is maybe in the hybrid product play workshop. Kind of what I'm thinking. It's in a class that I've done in the past, but this is a great example of using a whole bunch of chipboard pieces, random chipboard pieces, all together. A couple other things to note about this one. I'll bring it down here so you guys can see it down here as well. There's no photos on this layout, right? That's number one. It's a story that is documenting both facts and feelings. And then it's got a bunch of chipboard pieces and then a few vellum pieces. I think that's what I was doing is I was showing how to use vellum, use digital designs and then print them out on vellum. I think that was the lesson in this project. But I just took a bunch of random chipboard pieces, a bunch of random chipboard circles, and then added them all together. You could easily do something like this and pair it with a full page photo, which is kind of what I'm going to do in this video today. So let's take a look at a few different shapes. The first one are the tag shapes. So I pulled out from my box here, one of my boxes. I'm just getting used to this system, but I had 5 different chipboard pieces that are all in that shape. So one of the things that I considered doing here, the Ready, Set, Go one was about travel. It didn't really apply to the story that I was going to tell here. But as I looked at these, I was like, okay, embrace imperfection, check. Make time for fun. I personally think reading is fun, so that works for me. Totally great, LOL, which to me still this embracing the mess of all of this makes me laugh. And then, oh yeah, because I do really like the books, right? And I love having all of the books, and I'm always getting more books and wanting to read more books. So a couple things that I'm thinking about here on this layout. I don't know yet if I'm actually going to work with these chipboard pieces directly or if I'm going to pick some different ones, and I kind of want to talk through that process a little bit. So we'll probably come back to these. I'm thinking there's lots of different ways that you could do this. You could take these and you could use the shape as a jumping off point and actually print out books. I could print out the books that I'm currently reading and cut them into the shape and have a repeated grid over here. That's one thing I can do. Another thing that I'm thinking about is that I could also put all of these tags here at the top and have them stick up off the top of the page and then push something, put some ribbon or twine or something through these holes, which are actually punched out, but sometimes you got to push them out a little bit better. And these chipboard are all adhesive on the back too. So that's something else I can do, or having them down along the bottom and still have still stick string or twine through them and then have my story up above, right? So that is an easy way that I could approach this page. But I also want to just talk about some of these other shapes just to get you thinking about some other ways that you can use the chipboard. One of them, the half circle chipboard shapes, are one of the ones that I like. So I have a bunch here that can work together. And so you kind of just have to figure out, so here's one that could create a title on the top of a page, and your journaling could be down below, especially if you just want something super simple. But you could also do a few different ones. Maybe you want to do a couple here. What did I see? Maybe it's a different project, a project about something else, or gratitude, right? So much gratitude, and let's say I want to add that on there. So going through and looking at the different chipboard pieces you have, looking at what sentiments are on there, what patterns are on there, and how they could actually support the story that you want to tell. And I love circles anyway. So kind of fun idea there of just bringing those half circles together to create larger circles. All right, so I'm putting these half circles back into their little container here, and then I wanted to show you, let's talk about hexagons. So hexagons are another shape that we have on chipboard from time to time. Some of these, some of them are funny when you actually think about it. Like this one says, I simply cannot imagine my life without you, which is great for telling a story about someone who's important to you in your life, but I could also use that to tell the story about books for me. So if I just laid that down on there, here's one, that one's a little bit smaller. Let's pick the ones that are the same. Embrace the detours, that could be part of this. Love this could be part of this. Some of these are travel. The best is yet to come, or these little moments, right? So you can see here how I'm starting to bring some of these pieces together. Again, I could take pattern paper and cut out those same shapes and have a bunch of different hexagons on there. I could have something like this, which is simply a title that has 3 hexagons. So thinking about chipboard in terms of shapes and how can you bring those together. And what I'm focusing on today is just using like shapes. So if I was gonna do something just using the chipboard, or just using the hexagons, or just using hearts, or just using circles. For circles, I have so many circles, I could easily do something like I did on this one that would relate to my feelings about reading or where I'm at with reading right now. I know that Jen Scow, one of our creative team members, she did a really cool layout the other day that she shared where she was using a bunch of the sentiment strips. And I'm just gonna lay some out here. I don't know exactly what they say on them, but you'll get the idea. You know, again, of using something like this where it becomes a title, you know, looking through the different ones you have, especially if you are a subscriber to our story kits or to Stories by the Month, you may have a collection built up of these. So going back in there and taking the chipboard pieces apart really gives you an opportunity to use them in different ways than if they were just on the backing. It gives you an opportunity to see them in different ways, essentially. So I love the idea of this too. I really like how this kind of takes up a lot of space, and then my journaling could be down below. I actually think I'm going to do it that way. This, like I said, is similar to the way that Jen did it. I think she used some of the smaller pieces, but you get the idea of what I'm bringing together here. All right, so I just laid out all the ones that I happen to have, or the ones that I gathered up when I went through my past ones. There's all kinds of different shapes too. Like there's these ones that look like little banners. That's also something that I could do, you know, where you could layer them or make them in a what am I trying to say? In a vertical line, that kind of thing too. See, there's just so many. These were ones where I thought were really fun when I went through here, like around the house. Let's see what other ones I can pull out here. I could also, you know, that these could be over here on the white page. So I'm not really necessarily just, I'm laying them on there right now just to kind of see what were the sentiments on the ones that I had or that I pulled out when I went through this process. See, I think the ones that say things like I love you just make me laugh because I could use them related to books. Weekly goals, focus on the good, here comes summer, pieces of my story. There's also a bunch that are like spring cleaning related, which is kind of a fun way to think about it also. I think I'm going to go with these ones. It's just something fun. It's a little bit different. So I'm going to play around with, where's that everyday one? See how many I actually want to include on there. So those guys all have their own little home. And I think I probably want it to be a little bit shorter. So what I'm envisioning is that I'm going to go back over to my computer and I am going to type up some journaling that's going to go in the space on the bottom, and then potentially have these on the top, and maybe have one over here that connects between the two pages. Let's see, I'm kind of thinking. I think if I do something like this and then have the journal on the bottom and potentially maybe have a pattern paper on the top where it's kind of a half and half in terms of the design, I'll probably make it a little bit higher there. But this is when I would get out my ruler and I'd be like, okay, so if I did that, then that's probably about 3.5 inches is where I would want to have my my story down below, or my journaling, or whatever else I'm going to do. So I'm gonna go back over to my computer and investigate that a little bit and figure out what I want to do for my journaling. Okay, so I went over to my computer and I really simply just copied and pasted the text from my Instagram post of this photo and created a box basically and outlined a page. I do this in Illustrator. You could do this in Photoshop. This comes about from measuring. Like, that's how I figured out how big this box was going to be. And then I adjusted my type size. I played around with making it smaller. I'm generally a fan of smaller type, but as I get older, I also know that I'm having a harder time seeing things. So it's still, I feel like it's one of those things that's kind of relative, and you just need to choose what makes the most sense for you. So what I'm thinking, this is actually pretty thin paper. This is Epson matte presentation paper, but it's the thinner version of that. They've got a couple different ones, but I'm kind of thinking what I'm going to do is just actually adhere this onto that background piece of cardstock that I already cut. So let's go ahead. So the story here is basically just kind of what I'm reading right now. And that's the kind of story that I tell from time to time. And I always like that opportunity to do it on, create an Instagram post where I'm telling a story, and then that ends up being a holding place for the story until I am ready to go ahead and make a project around it. So let's see what we have here. This should be about the same size. So let's talk about, now that we have this, so there's my journaling. This, again, simple, right? It's simple, especially with the typed part, but you can always do your handwrite your journaling, that sort of thing. And when I'm looking at my projects like this, I'm definitely looking at it in a grid format. So a home for my journaling, a home for my photo, a home for some embellishing, which is what I'm gonna look at doing next here. Okay, so at this point in the process, I can do a couple things. I could leave it. It could just be just like this and it would be perfectly fine. Nice white background, very simple, very clean. Maybe I put this one over here. Maybe I put this one back over here. I haven't decided yet which ones I'm going to use just yet. It could be done, right? That's awesome. So another thing that I could do is I could look through my stack of pattern papers. So let's just pull some of those out. I honestly don't have a lot of pattern paper anymore. This is basically my stack. Like, this is what I have of pattern paper, and I'm looking just to verify that that is correct. So I use it probably more sparingly than I did in the past, and I think some of that has been because of that switch to more card-based scrapbooking, 3x4 cards, 4x6 cards, and because I'm feeling that pull back to the traditional a little bit, it's been fun to add a few more pattern papers again, and then we've started creating some pattern papers, which is something, actually, let me look at that. Okay, so perfect example of going to my stash. So the heart scrapbook kit that you might have seen the video for, this is coming out later, within the next few weeks, hopefully. We had to postpone the launch of it, but I'm kind of thinking that this pattern may be perfect on the top here. This is not planned. This is not planned. This kind of stuff just happens sometimes. That's going to be perfect for me. I love it. Kind of has the same colors. It's nice and light and bright. There's a few other, there's lots of other patterns that are within this too. So anyway, this pattern is a part of the scrapbook kit that is coming out later, sometime soon. I will let you know, of course, when that is happening. But that is going to be perfect on there. One thing also, for those of you that like digital products, or if you're interested in working with any digital products, the scrapbook kit includes the digital version too, so you can reprint the papers as many times as you want. All right, so this just makes me so happy. So originally the other idea I had was stamping all over the place was really kind of the sentiment of this photo. Like the first sentence said, this photo is pretty representative of my current reading life all over the place. And that is really what it feels like. So I had considered using the stamp and stamping all over the place using some larger letter stamps. I've got a wide variety here, but we'll do that on another project in the future. I think this is gonna be a perfect thing to add on here. So I think what I'm gonna do is, I'm trying to decide, I think I'll just trim this one here, and then that will help me figure out the size of the other one. I'm just gonna adhere that to the background cardstock. Whiskers trimmer. One thing you also might notice here is when I printed out my journaling, I left about a half inch along the edge because I am going to need to punch holes in my paper there to be able to have it fit into an album. And so we'll do that in just a minute here, but I need some adhesive. All right, and then I'm gonna, oh, seriously, it makes me so happy to use this paper. All right, so that is gonna go on the top. And then I'll keep this other piece of pattern here. And these, in that scrapbook kit, what you see here is that we have pattern, there's 12 by 12 pattern papers as well as this outside the page projector size, which is 7 inches wide by 8 1/4 tall. You guys, those of you that want to do 6 by 8 still can also cut those down. All right. And that's like that pattern on the back side. Okay, this is making me happy. All right, around the house would be good. I kind of need to decide, do I want to have something over here? And maybe I do and maybe I don't. I think I'm gonna go look at the hearts, some of the heart pieces, because that might work really well there. Actually, let's look at the chipboard hearts that I have. See if there's one that might work really good. Just playing around with the orientation. All right, so what do we have here? Bring on the meal, probably not that. Thankful for you would work. Get outside, thank you, Dad. Some of these are obviously very specific. The EXO would work, but that's a little bit too dark. Okay, I don't know. We may just not need it. Sometimes the photo on the other side of the page there doesn't need it. But let me see what else I have. Okay, a few of the other things in the heart kit. There was the felt hearts. There's these transparent hearts. There's this guy, or these ones that have like an outline on them. Kind of thinking that what I might do is use that outline and create something that has word phrase stickers behind it. Actually, let's punch the holes before I forget that. Now I use this 6-hole punch. There seems to be like love-hate with this particular 6-hole punch. Some people love it, some people don't love it. There are other ones out there. This is the one that I've been using for years, and I literally just slip it right in. I use the page protector there as the guide. But there's lots of different ways that you can get your holes punched. You can use a bigger hole punch. I'm just trying to get it in the right place. I think one of the things that people don't like about this one sometimes is they feel like it doesn't go in far enough into the page itself. Like they wish that it would go in farther, like the same exact distance as the page protector, but that hasn't really bothered me. Hasn't been a big deal to me. So I am gonna keep using that. Okay, so you guys saw me take a little bit of a risk there, diving into some other products that I have here, some things that I purchased over the last year or so. And I love these foam, whatever these are called, foam letters. They totally remind me of old school stuff. Foam phrase stickers is what they're called. This one is, it's just thicker, so it's just American Crafts branded thickers, but it has like gold, some gold things and some black. And I really like the pairing of the black, especially with the black of the type over there. And it goes to the sentiment of how I felt like, or what I felt. And I just like it. We'll leave it at that. So the idea of putting word phrase stickers behind here is totally still something that I will probably do at some other point in time. You could take a bunch of different word phrase stickers, bring them together, and then use the heart chipboard piece there as the outline for that. I also didn't use this guy, which is something that I looked at. I kind of liked how the color was similar there. So a couple things I want to encourage you with this project and just some of the things that I've done here over the last few minutes is that idea of things being good enough and simply making a decision and sticking something down. We can allow ourselves to agonize and go back and forth and hem and haw about whether or not this is the perfect embellishment, this is the perfect chipboard, but the reality is it's the story and the photos that matter the most. The rest of the stuff is a fun opportunity to play with color, to play with type, to play with design, to support the stories that we want to get told. So, got that there. I think I'm gonna go ahead and just dive in here and start adhering these down. I wanna start with trying to get it in the middle. This is a super simple use of chipboard, right? Like I literally am just stacking the chipboard. Maybe I'm gonna go with 5 of them. Stacking the chipboard right on top of the page. It's not excessively complicated. It's very easy. And the reason why I was able really to do that or to see that in that way is because of how I decided to organize my chipboard this time. So I'm going to keep going with this. We'll see how this organization works for me, if I continue to like it or if I wish that I never would have done it. I will let you know. As someone who has been memory keeping for a long time, I've had a variety of different organizational procedures and setups over the years. I have had tons and tons and tons of product here at my house, and I have had other times where I had a lot less, and I've definitely found that less is better for me from a creative standpoint. But I'm excited to test out how this goes and see how it works for me. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to let me finish this before we dive into that. All right, so I ended up adding just a couple more things here. I switched out a couple of the black foam pieces and added chipboard on there, partly because it just ties the color into the other page and adds another chipboard piece on there. I think the overall color scheme on this page flows well with the ones over here. You saw me adhere those guys down. And then one other thing that I want to do on here, whenever I finish a page like this, is I actually want to show you me putting it in my album or in a album, because I think it's really awesome to see that's the start to finish, right? The finished part of the process for me is actually putting it in an album. It's not stacking it in a corner somewhere. It's not stacking it and waiting to do the journaling later on. As you can see in this case, like this is a great example of starting with story. So I started with the story first, which happened, earlier in the week when I wrote the story about the photo and the books that I'm reading right now or have read recently. So that was the jumping off point. I had the photo, I had the words, and then I was able to find some products here in my collection to support that storytelling, focusing this week on chipboard. So once I finished my project, then these look like blank pages, but it's because they are outside of the page protector pages here, and I just haven't adhered them back to back, which is probably something that I'm gonna do. So many of these pages were made in the Story Kit subscription. That is something that I do every month, but this is also going to be just a really nice addition to my album here and to my storytelling for this year. Again, the stories that we tell don't have to be monumental, don't always have to be celebrations. It can be the beautiful everyday kinds of stuff, like a list of what you're reading or what you currently read. All right, that is a wrap for this week's Craft the Story episode. If you're enjoying these episodes, please click the subscribe button below. That will help you be notified when a new video comes up, which this year is every Friday for this Craft the Story series. If you're not on YouTube and you want to subscribe, you can click on the video link and click over to YouTube and subscribe on there, or you can always catch these on my blog as well. We'll see you back here again next week for another episode.